Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K episode 23 After Talk made by AFanWithTooMuchTime. If you want to check out episode 23, The Cost of Honor, remember that the episode as well as my other reactions to the other episodes, the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and you'll be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey there, everybody. Fan with Too Much Time here. And if I sound a little bit tired, it's because that episode was really long, and also because I have had insomnia. Oh, fun! I like that my episode still kind of feels like it came out quality, despite the fact that I feel like I've slept like 6 hours in the past 8 days. I don't know how I've done that. I'm not even that math literally makes sense to me right now, and it might be true. So,
that's unhealthy. You need to sleep, man. You need to sleep.
No idea why that is. I'm gonna do what I've been doing and push through it and talk about some news. So, as I said in my last after talk at the end there, this is going to be my last video for a little bit, and when I come back, I'm going to release all of the videos from where we are to the very end of Season 1, all in 1 week, one day after the other, and sort of like this continuous rollout to the very end. So, yeah, we're looking at another hiatus, unfortunately. I need to take that to get things in order, but when I come back, it's going to be all rolled out at once, and at the end of that, we'll talk about some other projects I want to do, and maybe some things about, you know, my own original works. Because it's not really in me to necessarily ask for just donations, but what I can do, and what I would appreciate it if you did, is point you to the things I'm trying to do. You know, sort of a teach a man to fish sort of mentality. But we'll discuss that when that comes out. So just be aware, next Monday after that, you probably won't see a video, at least not a video like from this series, because I'll be making all those first and then releasing them all in 1 week. Or maybe more than 1 week. I'll have to see how many videos I end up making. I don't think I'll make more than 7 videos. Come on. I've said that before, though. In any case. So, that being covered, I also wanted to talk a little bit about... Oh, hold on. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the Black Carminians and the Carcosans. So just...
Okay, so these regiments are your own creation. Okay? Let me just see this here. Okay.
A little brief about each of them, not trying to sit on it too long before I go over to the Q&As. So let's start with the Black Carminians. The Black Carminians come from the artificial world of Black Karma. And Black Karma is a very interesting world in that it's artificial. It's not really a world. It's a gigantic space station, potentially an alien space station, though there are signs that it was some form of dark age of technology, tech that relates to humanity in some way, but there's also evidence that it is an alien thing. One of the most alien things about Black Karma is its automated systems. So the whole world has a shit ton of automated systems that freak the Mechanicus out, but the issue is that, and it's not like they haven't tried, I'm not saying that they view this and like, okay, that's enough evidence for us not to do anything. No, that's not what I mean. All of the automated systems on Black Carcosa, on Black Karma, they're all sort of like, I don't know if this is how you say it, but like Rube Goldberg machines or like dominoes. They don't appear to be guided by a sentience or a true intelligence. They appear instead to be like only resembling truly intelligent systems, but much like how a planetary ecosystem sort of just exists and runs on cycles that it has created due to like mechanical processes, so too are the automated systems of this artificial world-sized space station.
I wonder whether this artificial world-sized space station was like a fortress world, designed by the humans of the time during the dark age of technology, and it was like a fortress that defended a important position in the galaxy for the humans. Maybe it's something like that. Yeah. Let's continue hearing what he says about it.
So too are they, without any obvious guiding intelligence or connective tissues or like computer. Now, that isn't to say they haven't been like, okay, well, it may look that way, but we're going to still try to, lobotomize whatever intelligence we appear to be here, because it does appear to be intelligent. It's only when you pull the threads out that you begin to see that it's like a starfish, no brain in any one place. So
it's like a manufactured life, manufactured existence on this planet, instead of it just being naturally occurring on a planet, like having biodiversity, life of all forms and shapes and sizes, that occurs naturally, and everything has its place, has its purpose and stuff like that. This was from the ground up, made by human hands, if I can say that. That's quite impressive.
They tried, and that's another issue, is that, and that leads to the furthering of the belief that Black Karma is truly only intelligently designed versus being intelligent in and of itself. Black Karma has no central computer, no real computers the way we would think about them almost at all. And those that do exist are very fundamental and basic. So thus far, the Mechanicus has not been able to locate any central system core or even junctions or connective networks that would lead to an intelligent system by any understanding they can, get. Despite that, Black Karma is not named Black Karma for no reason. Black Karma is an extrasolar, quote-unquote, planet. What this means is that it doesn't actually orbit a star. It is its own system. It doesn't have anything that orbits it either. It's literally just this space station.
How did they find something like that in space? If it's not orbiting a star, there's no light reflecting on it. So, did they find this station by chance? Or, was there some sort of gravitational pull from this station that, the sensors from whatever exploratory vessel was passing by could sense that, there's this large object almost that way in space? That's interesting, really. That's really interesting. So, it's in perpetual darkness, surrounded by starlight in every single direction, and it's beautiful. It must be a beautiful sight to behold. But I wonder, how does the life continue to exist on the surface if there's no sunlight? Where does it get the heat from? From internally, from its core, and that heat transfers to the surface?
Flying out in the void of black space, no star, no nebula, nothing. Just cruising out there in its own galactic orbit as part of the Milky Way's galactic disk. It releases a repeating signal that draws ships that get close enough to it. And what happens is that Black Carcosa is basically formed out of a central core. All of this is artificial, all of this is metal, and hollow. It's formed out of a central core surrounded by many twisting and turning rings. And the rings are sort of held up by geomagnetic technologies that are not intelligent but are incredibly advanced. These rings spin, and they have notches in them that allow them to spin past each other, and more importantly, to spin around the space elevator that goes out from the core all the way out way past all of the spinning rings in a single slide down.
How many rings are we talking about here?
So the rings are generally spinning They do stop from time to time and connect to each other, but they're typically spinning, and it seems kind of random, the spinning and the way that it works. All right, there's a lot about Black Karma, so I'm gonna try to narrow this down and maybe explore on it later. But I'm just gonna cover the basics. So, when you arrive at Black Karma, the only place a ship can really dock and be in any kind of way safe or stable is at the top of this space elevator, which is kind of like this big chute leading from the core with all the spinning rings around it, all the way past the spinning rings to open up into this kind of sort of like metallic flowering structure that can hold a shit load of ships. Inside of this metallic flowering structure is an enormous, intelligently designed, but again, not intelligently maintained, city that is ready to be settled. Anyone who...
Wait, the city is inside the flower. Okay.
Who attempts to settle it, though, will find themselves shunted down the elevator as soon as they fall unconscious in a proper place. Like they'll be the whole building or room will be shunted down to the core of Black Karma. At the core of Black Karma is a place called the Night Garden, and inside the Night Garden are this local fauna that are like animals. They're really, really tough, though. Very, very difficult to kill, and they reproduce like crazy, but they don't seem capable of leaving this place. They're called Night Gaunts. Night Gaunts don't bother almost anything as long as it's of a certain maturity. For humans, this certain maturity is about the age of 16. You can live down in the Night Garden until you're 16. And the reason they call it the Night Garden is naturally there is no natural light. All the light in the Night Garden comes from the flora and fauna, most of which bioluminesce. And
wow, it's like Avatar. It's like Avatar. What's the planet called again? Pandaria? Yeah. The local fauna and flora on the planet is also bioluminescence. And yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Typically, the Night Garden is extremely hospitable, with lots of fruit-bearing trees, medicinal plants, a lot of earth analogs for that kind of thing. You can live kind of comfortably in the Night Garden, though. Of course,
and as he's talking about this Night Garden and the station itself, Black Karma, it's also kind of reminding me of the Halo rings from the game Halo. Yes, you know how the Forerunners created these self-contained ecosystems on the inside of the ring, you know, to safeguard all the life forms that they've cataloged from all the different planets, just in case should they activate the Halo array and all life is wiped out, there will still be, you know, life that is being kept in these facilities that can be researched, that can be reintroduced to many planets that have been eradicated of life. So maybe it's something similar with Black Karma. Maybe Black Karma was a sanctuary, or it was just an experiment, you know, with bioluminescence creatures. And yeah, it's also a military station.
Of course, without any technology, the Night Gaunts tend to attack most forms of it that they find. So the Night Gaunts, however, will attack and kill and eat people, and they will do so rather ruthlessly as soon as, well, not as soon as, but once they turn over the age of 16. At that point, according to factors that people haven't been able to really figure out, the Night Gaunts will begin to stalk and then eventually kill people who cross this age barrier.
How can they detect when someone has surpassed the age of 16? That's quite interesting. And why would they attack humans that have gone past the age of 16?
Sometimes they do it within an hour of a person turning 16, and sometimes they do it 2 years after. So it's sort of variable, and people can take a risk and try to stay in the Night Garden longer than they should if they think that they can get away with it. Now you might say, okay, why would anyone risk that? Well, because the only way out of the Night Garden isn't back up to the elevator. It's basically impossible to go back up to the elevator. The only way out of the Night Garden is up through the rings. And each ring is an incredibly, incredibly hazardous and challenging and puzzle-riddled environment that pits the contestants of the rings, that pits the survivors living within each ring against the others for progression into the next ring. Most of these environments are so toxic or hostile that the people that live in them have to create vehicles or mobile shelters to operate in them. And to a degree, they have actually created different societies on each of these rings from people who have been trapped there and building upon the things that were left there by the people that came before. So, try to wrap this up. Each ring gets you closer and closer to the actual flowering structure. And once roughly every Terran year, the topmost ring will connect with the space elevator, and you can return to the city at the top, and presumably your ship and everything that you left behind when you were shunted down to the bottom. And who knows how long it has been since that happened. If you went as an adult, you may very well be an old man if you ever make it at all. So let me think here. Trying to remember something here. So there are actually a fair amount of manufactura around here, but they're used mostly for the construction of vehicles that are then sent down in the elevator to help people that are down there try to get up through here. Mostly because the survival rate is just super low when people are sent down there without anything. Most of the vehicles that are actually supplied, most of the equipment that are actually supplied for the Black Carminian Obsidian Guard, who leave the planet as different regiments of the Imperial Guard, are supplied by I think it's the Volcris Forge World. Volcris supplies a lot, in part because Volcris itself is a Matryoshka world, which is horrifying when you realize that it's a Forge World, Matryoshka world, and the kinds of pollution you get in that, you literally cannot imagine it. But they can produce a lot. So, leaving Volcris for its own episode, though, to wrap up Black Karma, once you reach the top of, the top of the whole thing, you get through all these horrible Mad Max-like situations that are getting worse and worse. Some are underwater, some are in the desert, some are across surfaces that transform into sun-like landscapes during certain times. Once you make it to the top, you are basically by default extremely skilled at certain kinds of survival, and especially being inside of a vehicle and making it fucking work by the time you get to the top. And also, the city will not shunt you down twice. Like, you have to contrive for yourself to be sent down twice. The city won't automatically do it. Once you've been sent down once, it has a way of recognizing and not sending you down twice. So, almost all of the high-up officials, who of course live in the nice city, have in some way survived Black Karma. And
wow, it's like a rite of passage. Very dangerous and difficult rite of passage.
By surviving it, you have a situation where the administrators and people who are in control of Black Karma very rarely lapse into luxury or indulgence simply because of what they've had to go through just to get to this point. That being said, you might wonder, okay, in the episode you mentioned that Black Karma has a sprawling human population, that Carcosa does too. How can that be if they're death worlds? And you can already see how Black Karma is a death world, in that lots of people fucking die. But what keeps there being people here? Why doesn't it just eventually filter out all the people and just have a sort of stable population? Well, everyone's kids will get sent down eventually. Typically, children under the age of 7 won't be shunted down to the core by the city, but it's not a given, and eventually they will be. But more than that, the Imperium kind of uses, or rather the Zectic sector kind of uses, the world of Black Karma as a penal colony, without it actually being any kind of real penal colony. You can be sent to Black Karma as long as your crimes are of a certain nature, and they're not like, like you're not a chaos heretic or something like that. Like, what may get you sent to a normal penal colony, like things that, could get you done there, will get you sent here to Black Karma. And the idea is that if you can fight your way all the way up through the rings, and you make it to the city, you will then be deployed as a member of a Black Carminian regiment. And at that point, all of your crimes are expunged, and of course, you leave Black Karma as an Imperial Guard regiment, which means that, good for you, you don't want to stay there. You don't want to have residency in that place. And you get to settle down wherever it is that your Guard regiment eventually settles you down, or, die proudly for the Imperium. Either way, better than serving in the vast majority of penal legions if you make it. And one of the reasons is because Black Carminians may come from criminal stock and all kinds of crazy people that are sent down these rings, but by the time that they manage to get up, and this is because part of one of the rings kind of involves you forming up into organization, so it's not like they all come out like pure Mad Max barbarians. They come out as Mad Max barbarians who have also been forced afterwards, after becoming that way, to organize for the purposes of making it past two very specific rings. They come out sort of trained in that way. What was I trying to say? Oh, right. So Black Carminians are valued. You know, you pump 10,000 criminals down there. You're lucky if you get 10 back out, you know, at that ratio. So Black Carminians are valued, and their vehicles are very, very well maintained and are not shitty, and they themselves are not, they're not wasted the way the chem dogs might be wasted. You know, they're not given anything that would tear them up or kill them early. Though, of course, Black Carminians usually come out super fucked up from what they've already gone through. But they become a prized regiment. They're very, 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 very good at what they do. These guys can live in tanks and work these things like instruments. That being said, Black Carminians, part of what happens to you going through those rings, it strips out your humanity. So expect very little mercy from the scarred tank crews and support crews of Black Karma. For the hearts of the Black Carminians are as black as that of their own homeworld, or rather the world that forged them, home or not. So that's Black Karma.
Black Karma is an interesting, planet, and the Black Carminians also, imagine being a criminal and being sent down there, and you can't live in paradise. You can't live in the night gardens because you're older than 16. You have to get out of this place. You have to fight against other people who are also trying to survive, as they go to the rings and the different levels of the rings, higher and higher and higher, until you get to the last ring that will take you up the space elevator to the city that's inside the flower. That's an interesting kind of structure, I think, like a flower, petals that are the shipyards, and then inside you would have the city. That's quite interesting. And yeah, it would change you, going through an experience like this. It would definitely change you. It would make you probably a better human being, maybe, I don't know. AFanWithTooMuchTime does say that, people there turn out black and, in terms of their hearts, cold, calculating, probably, merciless. But I don't know. I think they would be more disciplined compared to other human beings across the galaxy. Far more disciplined, far more, restrained and controlled. They wouldn't be led astray by human desires, because they've become so strict after living in such an environment for so long. So yeah, I think it's a good penal colony. I think it's a really good one. Earn your freedom. Earn your freedom. And once you've earned your freedom, you'll find that the outside world, it's just not enough. It just doesn't give you the kind of discipline that Black Karma has given you. And yeah, I think it's interesting.
I'm sorry, Black Karma is probably the most complex of the two, because it's hard to sum up what it exactly is. And attempts have been made, by the way, by both the Mechanicus and by the Skywatch, the Crimson Razors, and other Space Marine chapters, and other forces to permanently force settlement of the entirety of Black Karma and crush out these systems that are forcing these different conditions on the rings. All of them have met with nearly absolute failure. With,
like I said, once you've survived such a situation, mentally you'll be so focused and stable, and you'll be calculating, you'll be cold, but you won't be susceptible to other human desires and weaknesses and all those things that other human beings would try to use against you, because you've survived through something so hellish, so exhausting, until you've reached up to the top. Anything that the universe throws at you will not be able to stick on you because you are so disciplined. Yeah.
Just a little bit of headway being made on the outermost ring, where there actually managed to be like insert colonies, and you can actually artificially pull people out without having them pass, like legitimately, because the outermost ring has been breached and has breach points that can be accessed by the Imperium that controls it. But the cost, the amount of death, the resources that went into just achieving that much basically ensured that they'll never try it again. It just isn't worth it. It just isn't worth it. So, moving on to Carcosa, which is much easier to explain, though it is also a very interesting place. Carcosa was a desert world that was very rich in various kinds of minerals that, when alloyed together, create when alloyed with traditional adamantium, would create specialty kinds of adamantium. Adamantium that is particularly heat resistant at the cost of being a little flimsier, or much harder but less flexible, stuff like that. And it had mining colonies on it for that purpose. It was swallowed up by a warp storm, and when the warp storm spat it back out, the sand had all hardened into glass and stone, and had become this crazy, jagged, harsh landscape. And the people who survived on there, only mutants remained. So the Imperium came back to came back to Carcosa for a few reasons.
Wipe out the life.
Minerals are now they coalesce. So as before, they'd have to actually filter them out of the sand, which was a long and arduous process. Now they're coalesced, and they're actually more potent than they were before. And because of the glassification of the planet, enormous amounts of natural adamantium deposits that were heretofore undiscovered are now able to be detected and sought by the Imperium who discovered it. So Black Carcosa is still a very, very valued mining world, and it supplies a great deal of incredibly potent materials and specialty resources to the forge worlds of the Zectech sector. That being said, Carcosa, just Carcosa. Carcosa is cursed, and it is often known as Cursed Carcosa. And it's cursed in a few ways. First of all, the planet doesn't really have a breathable atmosphere. It's very Kriegian in that way. It's not necessarily irradiated to the point like in Krieg. It's not just that you can't breathe outside. It's that you can't anything outside. The moment your skin touches the air out there, it withers away. It's not quite that way. It's more the case that the atmosphere has been mostly stripped off of Carcosa, despite the fact that the planet is huge and should have an atmosphere. So because of that, most of the cities and hives that are built into Carcosa are built down, corkscrewing down, to get closer to the mineral wealth as opposed to corkscrewing up. And they're like pits, like these big-ass holes.
So you could say something like Zion, the city of Zion, like in the Matrix, how they've built the entire civilization underground instead of on the surface, because on the surface, no one can survive up there because of the environment and because the machines are patrolling the place. So there's no way for Zion to go upwards. It has to go further, deeper underground. So it's something like that, I think.
And there's a lot of signs that Carcosa had Xenos presence and even a Xenos empire sitting on it prior to the Imperium's arrival, even before it was swallowed by a warp storm. Blackstone constructs riddle the landscape. But the precise nature of these constructs has not really been determined by Imperial servitors who have been down there trying to figure it out. Neither has the Adeptus Mechanicus had any luck deciphering precisely what kind of Xenos may have left these enigmatic structures, or if they even originated from Xenos at all. So there are a few things about Black Carcosa aside from its really inhospitable environment that, makes it bad. I mean, aside from the fact that mining in this place is literally mining through glass. So, it sucks. Glass gets everywhere, glass dust gets everywhere, it cuts you, it's very sharp. Most of the time.
And imagine it can be fine glass particles. That stuff will get in your clothing, will get in your filtering systems. You get cuts, it'll get into your blood, and it's contaminated because of the warp storm that engulfed the planet. So not only is the glass physically dangerous, but also through toxins and through other forms of molecule infections, you will become probably a mutant. Yeah.
It's also poisonous. The glass is not pure glass. It's warp glass. You guys should know, if you've read enough books on from the Black Library, what happens to glass when you put it through the warp. And, it's no good. That shit's not good. So, Carcosa is an intensely religious society. And they need to be, to try to ward off the constant threat of corruption from everything around them. The hives are the big corkscrew hives, the pits they're called, are the only, they're really the only safe places where you don't have to look at the glass, and only sometimes. So Carcosans try to mine blind when they can. There's different layers, different levels of Carcosan miner and worker. And the lowest levels of them, they're lucky if they are even told to try to blindfold themselves and to mine blind. Often they just mine until they go insane or are killed for one other reason or another. And of course it goes up, and then the highest quality of miners have some form of protection from the glass and the glass dust. But and how they do it is they really do just like drill holes into this glass, create these mine shafts, seal them off, fill them with atmosphere as much as they can, and just have people work in them for certain shifts. And then when the shift is over, they pull everyone out, and then the atmosphere machines stop working because no one's supposed to be in there anymore, and the atmosphere leaks out and becomes poisonous again until the next work cycle, where they're sent back down. And you might say, okay, well, why aren't they continuous work cycles? There are lots of mines on Carcosa, so you don't really need to have any one mine constantly working unless it has something very, very valuable in it compared to the others. But also because Black Carcosa has some pretty bad fauna, and that fauna can get through and move through the glass. There are lots and lots and lots of different kinds of hideous and terrible warp-corrupted beings and animals that live on Black Carcosa. Again, I keep saying that live on Carcosa.
Wow. It goes under the glass? Oh, gosh. This kind of reminds me of Dune in a way. With the worms on is it Caracas or Arrakis? Arrakis, yes, right? Yes, Arrakis. It kind of reminds me of the Dune worms on Arrakis. So, yeah. This is not good. This planet is not nice at all. Yeah, it's definitely a death world.
And that can move through the glass or over it. So that's always a huge problem. Naturally, the people that come from Carcosa are very hardy if they can live past a certain age. But you're probably also wondering, okay, this is all pretty bad. I get that. And almost even sounds like a proper death world, even if enough people are dying in these mine shafts to whatever these creatures are. But what really makes it a death world? Well, there are two things. One, Black Carcosa has a curse of Carcosa, which is a kind of a weird thing. Anyone who has children on Carcosa will give birth to quadruplets. Always, they will give birth to quadruplets. Everybody on Black Carcosa, who is born in fours. Everyone, and no one knows why. This is a very, very, very consistent thing. And if you are, like, for example, if you are pregnant before coming to Carcosa and then arrive on Carcosa and and experience gestation there and then give birth on Carcosa, you probably won't get 4 children. You might most likely get like 1 child with like 4 heads. It's like that kind of thing. So clearly that's an effect on the planet. When the 4 children are born, they will all be identical. But as they age, there will be a progression that is observed. Typically, 1 child will be the most normal or entirely normal according to the natural genes and gene breeding of the parents that were present. 2 children will be mutants of some kind. They will have and bear mutations. They may even become pretty twisted as a result. And this is usually proportional to the original purity of the parents, but also a genetic purity, non-mutated gene strands. But in addition to this, it can kind of be a little random, but usually it won't go to the point where, like, these are the kind of mutants that you typically enslave and beat on the street, not that you kill on sight. The 4th twin, however, will typically be one of these mutants. It'll be a horrifically mutated offspring. And these are usually killed. They're religiously killed right off the bat as soon as it's discovered which one of them is going to be the one that mutates this badly.
Oh gosh, this is so depressing. I wouldn't necessarily call it a death world. I'd call it a depressing world. You know, like how could you have children in such an environment? I know there is no protection here. There are no condoms, you know, for men and for women. There are no contraceptives as well. So, you know, when people get it on, things happen, and bundles of joy are being born into this world. But on this world in particular, on Carcosa, you know, those bundles of joy have become cursed. And I wonder, can you tell which one is going to be okay, like at a very young age, which one is going to be okay, and the other 3 are not? And I don't want to say this, but I think, you know, some parents might want to kill their children so that they don't have to go through so much torment and suffering. If they are the ones who have mutated, extremely badly, and even those who are partially mutated. Yeah, I don't know. This planet, it sounds terrible. Really, it sounds terrible.
And this is not really shown off. Like, the children are more or less appear like the same, typically, outside of natural mutation that would occur anyway, up to the age of 13, and once puberty hits is when the mutations begin to take hold. So, unfortunately...
13 years old. No. I mean, even if I had my children who were on this planet, I can't kill them. No, I can't. Oh, this is terrible.
You just won't be able to know which one of them it is, even as you're raising them, which leads to the Carcosans having really... Well, they have that as part of their culture. It's a really hard thing for them to live through continuously. In addition, because the ratio is 1 to 3, like pure versus mutant, the population slowly degrades unless the less corrupted people insist on breeding with each other and thereby reducing the corruption of the pure offspring, therefore. Otherwise, the same thing that happened to Carcosa's population originally will occur, and that is that they will all devolve eventually into just monsters, mutants of an untenable variety. So that's a bad thing, and you might say, okay, that's really creepy, but what is Death World about that aside from killing every 4th child? If anything, that fills the planet up because people are giving birth 4 at a time. You're right. So how do they do this? How do they fix this? Well, this is where the Imperium decided to make Carcosa a Death World. You see, these people are all raised ridiculously religiously because they're constantly facing these different warp perils, and they're not typically the kinds of perils that you can bribe or even join. They're the kinds of perils that will eat you alive. So they're very, very deep into the Imperial cult, and most of the mutants on the planet are very, very guilty of their mutantness and want to repent for it and want to make up for it. So the Carcosans have a chance at this. You can either live on Carcosa as a minor, and unless you're pure, and I'll say this, the pure stranded Carcosans are the ones that are allowed to have protective equipment. I mean, they still get fucked up. It's not good to be in the mines, no matter who you are or how you're dressed. Your skin will get fucked, everything will get fucked over time, but you can actually live a long time, like a human lifespan, if you have protective equipment. The people who are more normal humans get the benefit of that stuff, typically. The mutants don't, and the reason is because it's sort of seen as the mutants being cowards, because they're choosing to live and try to be normal people instead of repenting the way they should. And to that you might say, okay, what is repentance? Is it killing yourself? No. There is a program, Imperial Guard training program on Carcosa that trains some of the most crack, anti-chaos, hardcore, like nonstop stormtrooper-esque troops that the Zectec sector has to offer. They are the Carcosan Untouchables, and they are very much sort of they're inspired heavily by the Dune Sardaukar, but on crack, like on crack. So the mutants on this planet, and there you can join up to be an untouchable and not be a mutant, but most of the untouchables are mutants. They are mutants of some variety from the two mutant children that we produced from the four, and sometimes, occasionally, if they can retain a human enough shape, a fourth child may be spared to join the Untouchables. The training. Sorry about that. Oh, right. So the training regimen that the Untouchables are put through is absolutely grueling. It isn't just grueling, it's cruel. It's half meant to kill them, and as opposed to just train them to be better soldiers.
And these are the people, the Obsidian Guard as well as the Carcosa Untouchables. These are the people that the civilians of Axiom have to be facing up against. These guys, these men and women in these guard regiments.
And part of the reason is because it's just an abundance of them. The planet is constantly producing so many mutants all of the time. And they're all heavily pushed to join the Untouchables. It takes them out of the breeding pool. It stops the planet's dwindling pure genes from degrading any further. And should they come out the other side, should they be truly trained and reshaped, there's actually, I have a few notes on this, but I'll spare you all the names and details. But this whole training program for the Untouchables is the brainchild of one particularly genius and devious commissar and his ecclesiarchal friend, and they put this together. And it both has a ridiculously high, unfairly high mortality rate, but it does also ensure that the lucky few who make it through the unpassable death parts of the Carcosan training are also trained to be the best of the best of the best crack troops without any fear of death nor any real notion of self-worth. These are like evil troopers. They inflict what they feel terrible self-loathing, but the way that they purge themselves of it is by inflicting it onto the enemies of the Imperium. All of the self-hatred that the ecclesiarchy bestows into mutants is taken and weaponized within the Carcosans to a degree that is just never really seen in most other places. And here's a really big thing about them. Once a Carcosan earns his Carcosan armor, which is that armor I described earlier, which kind of looks like a rubber hazmat suit with this big, rectangular night glass plate over the front, and then underneath it you can see the guy's face, but you can't because he's wearing a second helmet underneath that. There's like this insectoid rebreather underneath. Once they earn that armor, they almost never take it off. They have actually ways of washing themselves and using the bathroom while inside that armor, and they will, if they can help it, never take that armor off. Because
so they're like the Quarians from Mass Effect. You know, they're living in these suits. They'll never get out of these suits. But it's not because they'll die from infection like the Quarians. But it's like tradition and culture, especially within the military apparatus, that the Carcosa Untouchables, you know, have to wear this armor. Crazy stuff.
While they're inside that armor, first of all, very, very few people, like almost nobody, knows what the Untouchables look like, or know that they're all mutants under that under those armors. While they wear that armor, while they are marching in formation and are part of the Untouchables, they're not mutants anymore. They are Carcosan Untouchables, and that's different. It's repented. It's pure. But because of that, you will almost never see a Carcosan Untouchable outside of his armor or taking his helmet off. For them, that's shameful. It's like you know how the Mandalorian is about taking off his helmet and showing his face? That times a million. And they actually are extremely, extremely mean and persecutory towards other mutants, and will go out of their way to kill them or to abuse of them much more than they would otherwise. Though in general,
you would think that maybe they would have some sort of like a sympathy connection with those who are also mutants like them, but nothing. Cold.
In general, the Carcosans are utterly without mercy, without compassion, without humanity. In many ways, any humanity they may have had, even while they were just born as mutants, is brutally ripped out of them. And what is left is just an instrument of self-deprecating death. They want to die every bit as much as any Krieger would want to, but they want to kill the enemy even more. And this is kind of where you see a slant. A Krieger is eager to die because for a Krieger, death is redemption. The same applies to a Carcosan Untouchable, but in addition to that, it is also additional redemption. Additionally, it is worthy, it matters, it goes to your count to kill the enemies of the Emperor. And not only does it go to a count that you may never be able to fill in, you can fill it in. You can, as far as they're concerned, die after having done enough and go to the Emperor's side as a purified, like shed the suit when you die, like shed out of your armor, and almost like a metamorphized like butterfly come out a human instead of a mutant. And so they are eager to kill and eager to do as much as they can as Untouchables, but they're also eager to finally die and shed their mutant bodies and go forth as true humans to the Emperor's side in the afterlife. Of course, as you can imagine, they have heinously high attrition rates, which is why it's vital that Carcosa have this huge pool of mutants to constantly draw from, which it does. And that sort of wraps up the Black Carminians and the Carcosans, the Obsidian Guard and the Untouchables. And yeah, make no mistake, the men and women from either of these regiments are evil. They have to be. The Black Carminians a little less than the Carcosans, but to be what they are, so much has had to have been taken from them, and also voluntarily offered up and torn to pieces.
I would rather be a Black Carminian than a Carcosa, Cursed Carcosa. I'm sorry. No. That place is just so depressing, and no, I don't like it. I like the Black Carminians. At least there, you know, I will have this sort of discipline. If I should survive, I will have this sort of discipline that is unbreakable, unshakable. You know, that is as strong and as stern as a mountain, if I can say that. So yeah, I'd rather be a part of the black, or of the obsidian god, yeah, instead of the Carcosa untouchables. Ugh.
And so that's sort of an introduction there to the factions you have. Whereas the Calambians are sort of a more traditional guard regiment, just very much in the vein of like an American style with a very unique upbringing. The Carcosans and the Black Carminians are much more in the vein of the Death Corps of Krieg, or even more the standard Imperial, stormtroopers. They are just dag nasty malice and wickedness, ready to inflict itself on the enemies of the Emperor. There is no peacetime for creatures like these. So, having gone through that, let me go ahead and go through some of your Q&As. Let's see. Oh, and by the way, if you're asking where to put your Q&As, in the actual videos or in the aftertalks, put them in the actual videos. I always check there first. So let's go here, top to bottom. Q&A from Mr. Reich, or Reich, I think. I don't know, R-E-I-C-H. Q&A, is 65 going to start acting like a certain swell guy? Who knows, man? Who knows? I guess we'll have to wait until he's out there fighting in the snow and people.
I've been told that it is very likely that he is. Yes, by some people in the comment section, I have been told that Commander 65 is going to earn that name, Bloody Eyes.
We'll want to stop fighting because it gets too cold, and then we'll really see what kind of swell guy he acts like. Let's go down. Richard Korn. I'm kind of detecting a trend in this. So, Q&A from Richard Korn. For the Q&A, 1, should we be posting questions on the episode or the aftertalk? On the episode. 2, what is the Inquisitor's name? Alright, so the Inquisitor's name, let me try to remember.
You mean that SOB? Isn't it Tar Weiler? Or Wheeler? Ugh, hate that guy.
For this guy's name again. Tarweiler, that was his name. I forget if that was his first or his last name, but he's known as Tarweiler. That's typically Inquisitor Tarweiler. So, let me see here. 3, not a question, but my next 2 might take some time, so I'm posting this here. Caiaphas Cain did retire, but was dragged into the 13th Black Crusade, and he still lives until early M42. Fucking awesome. Okay, let's see here. 4, so Palpatine is the amalgamation of all the Sith, and the Emperor is a lot of shamans merged into one person. What do you make of the similarity? I think it's a fucking perfect similarity. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's great that it kind of works that way without me even having to make that work. Now, of course, the big flaw with the Emperor versus, the big flaw with the Sith versus the Emperor is that the Sith have been doing it for a less, it's implied that it was like almost all of the shamans of the Earth at the time, which is many more people than the Sith have, the Sith rule of 2 has been. So there's just more people in the Emperor than there are in Palpatine. And also, the people within the Emperor are of a great and varied kind, whereas the people within Palpatine are all along the same trend, that of the dark side, and with very, very little exception. And while that specialization does breed a certain kind of strength, it also certainly breeds a certain kind of weakness. So let's see here. 5.
Because, Palpatine can be predictable, because he thinks like a Sith, he acts like a Sith, he is a Sith, and all of his predecessors were all the Sith, and they all pretty much acted the same, they all pretty much did the same things, so you can almost tell, or predict how Sidious would, operate and how he would do things. But with the Emperor, since he's able to see multiple futures all at the same time, with him, it will be a far more difficult, I think, to predict his movements or what is he going to do, how is he going to do it. It'll be virtually impossible, Yeah, I think.
What is your take on the theory that worship of the Emperor has created a separate Emperor-shaped entity, and that this entity is what is responsible for things like Imperial Saints, the Legion of the Damned, and Acts of Faith? I hope there's more to it than that. Because we have seen the Imperial Saints and the Legion of the Damned and Acts of Faith do things. I mean, we've also seen them correspond very closely, especially the Legion of the Damned with Warp Phenomenon. But specifically with like miracles and saints, we have seen them do things in the Sisters of Battle that don't correlate with demonic and warp-based stuff, that actually run against like what that is. Like Blackstone should silence it, and it doesn't. I think there should be lots and lots of alternate dimensions and energy dimensions in 40K. I think it's cool if we don't know them all. I think that the Necron should be using quite a few, and I think that it'd be very cool if we began to tap into a different one that isn't necessarily the pure warp or necessarily just a warp realm itself, in the forms of the living saints. I don't know how that would manifest, but I'm eager to find things that are new and not necessarily tied down to the major factions we already know of in 40K. If you see Major Kill's video on the Ghoul Stars, you'll get a very big idea on my opinion on things like that. Me and him share that opinion. I like more stuff. We don't have to give everything to Chaos if we want to make it extra-dimensional or creepy. Not to say Chaos can't touch that too, which is always more fun, man. It's like, adding more characters to Dragon Ball Z so we can fuse them together. But let's go ahead and move down. So, Crypto Penguin, Q&A. You were answered how the Jedi Sith would react to an Emperor, but you forgot to answer how they would react to the Chaos Gods. Okay, so with the Sith, it's a little hard to say, because the Sith are individualistic enough that they would have different takes on it. For example, Darth Momin wouldn't be at all surprised. He would have said, yeah, duh, obviously, and then would just continue doing what he does, which is basically worshipping the dark side and doing ritual like atrocity in its name. So Darth Momin would just kind of take that as another piece of the puzzle he was already holding. But what else? Palpatine. See, Palpatine would hate the idea that the dark side is actually a living thing. And so would a lot of the Sith, because to them, the dark side is supposed to be a tool. And we know from the canon that they are a tool to the dark side, and that's how they're usually destroyed. They destroy themselves from becoming too dominated by its power. This is what happened to Palpatine in the last episode, and what happened to Palpatine even when Vader tossed him overboard. Why did Palpatine not lower his hands, stop pumping out his lightning, and jump or something? Because of the way Force lightning works, and because of the way it consumes you when you use it. So, if they became aware of Chaos Gods, it would be very... I don't even know. Like, I have to sit down and think about this very, very hard and maybe read more stuff. And it'd be per the Sith, because Palpatine would become aware now, suddenly, of the corruption of the dark side. Not in the form of the way the Jedi teach it, which he doesn't believe in, really, but in the actual form of, okay, there's entities that exist that are composed of it that try to get into my brain and make me do their will. And he wouldn't like that. He would fight that. He would want to become one of them, but I don't ever see him... See, he's the kind of Chaos champion whose ambition would always be to become a Chaos God, and never to actually just serve them. If he ever did serve Chaos Gods, it would be for the express purpose of getting betterment for himself, but never for their own glory, never for their own benefit. And that's the thing that you find with a lot of Chaos worshippers, is that a lot of them are fairly ambitious, but a lot of them, especially when they use the warp itself, they either know their place, kind of like Kaon, who Kaon is incredibly powerful, but Kaon doesn't even dream of becoming a Chaos God, or they worship the Chaos Gods. And Palpatine isn't going to worship anything that isn't Palpatine. You see what I'm saying? So it's interesting to see how he would try to come about that, because suddenly he would be like, okay, God, it makes me wonder if it would make Palpatine start to use the light side of the Force, which again, there is no, in the new canon at least, there is no...
Can he?
Gray. We actually have examples of Sith trying to use the light side, and it just weakens them and drives them mad, because you can't be both. So it's possible that Palpatine may have the willpower to inadvertently or advertently become a light sider to confound the Chaos Gods. See, God, it's so funny because it drives in such a weird position. Because to Palpatine, you'd be like, okay, wait. So these things live forever in the Force. Can I do that? I want to be a Chaos God. Very natural question. Very natural thing that Palpatine would pursue. I think we can all agree on that. And then you have examples of Force ghosts. And Palpatine would be like, a Force ghost. That's what I want to be. Unkillable, untouchable, living forever in the Force. Not just in physicality, but in the Force. That sounds fucking great, and I could be a Chaos God that way. How do I get that? And it's like, do all the opposite things of what you've been doing. And the thing is that Palpatine wants it, so he's not going to just give up on it just because the initial qualifications seem to disqualify him. He would just be like, no, I'm going to force it. I'm going to do it somehow. Or, hell, I can do it. If Jedi can do some stupid self-discovery bullshit, then I can do it. And Palpatine is strong enough of will that he can try and maybe do it. And then, of course, it'd be like when Lex Luthor got Superman's powers, and slowly he was like, oh my God, we're all just in here together, and we're all we've got. And suddenly he came to Superman's understanding by having had his powers, and he understood why Superman isn't evil, is because you can't have that much power, see all that he sees, and not come to the conclusion that you have to be good to each other. Something very similar may happen to Palpatine in his desperate and no-holds-barred attempt to become a Chaos God or a Force Ghost. That is, unless the Chaos Gods head him off and give him promises of that kind of power that he's able to believe. See, that's the problem, is that it can spin out. I say this extremely unlikely light side Palpatine scenario just to demonstrate to you how many ways this could spiral out. Like, my God, so many ways this could spiral out. Fuck, I mean, Vitiate might deadass try to eat a Chaos God. I will eat one, and then I will be one, and you will be me, and I don't even know if it'll mean that I'm dead, but it won't matter because we'll be the same. Like, there are lots of ways that a Sith can come at this kind of fucking problem, and I don't think any of them would really agree 100% with each other as to how to deal with it. For example, Plagueis strikes me as a Sith of a certain wisdom, and Plagueis would probably be like, okay, we have to defeat the Chaos Gods and bend them to our will, and not become Chaos Gods, because naturally we can't be Chaos Gods. That's a totally different thing. We have to take the dark side back and bend it to our will and figure out how to do that. And he would go about figuring out ways of like see, Plagueis would be the one that figures out how to make like nulls in Star Wars. He would fuck around with genetics and eventually isolate the gene inside of like the Ysalamiri and be able to splice it into other beings to create for himself weapons against the dark side. And he would be the kind of dude who's like both a psyker and a psyker who uses nulls and creates them to fight daemons. And he'd be like a radical inquisitor, basically, in the way that he tries to take it to them. And Palpatine may be that way, too. But Palpatine may be a million different ways, And depending on how secure Palpatine sees his mind as being and how much he thinks he can get away with it, he may very well try or even pretend to worship... excuse me. Pretend to worship a Chaos God just to try to get enough power to devour them or to learn their secrets or to become a Chaos God in and of himself. Palpatine's the kind of guy who'd try to become a Daemon Prince without ever actually surrendering his soul. Which, of course, is just a Force Ghost, right? But that's with the Sith. And so with the Sith, it's hard, it's complicated, I don't know. Like, and then to give you a different example, Darth Maul. What would Darth Maul do? Darth Maul would almost certainly serve the Dark Gods. He would lay down his saber before Korn and be like, give me power, give me the strength I need to take my vengeance and take my place as blah, blah, blah. And Darth Maul is comfortable, maybe not 100% comfortable, but he is comfortable enough in a subservient role to a master he believes won't fuck him to serve Korn, 100%. Maul would be all about that, 1,001%, and I think it's really obvious to see that. Vader is in a similar place, where Vader would be willing to serve a Chaos God if that Chaos God gave Vader what he wants. And maybe, over time, Vader would develop the ambition to be more like Palpatine, but we have never seen Vader live out long enough to become that way without Palpatine forcing it, and by just being the shittiest Sith Master you can imagine. Like, deadass, Palpatine teaches Vader borderline nothing about the Sith. He gives him stuff. He gives him stuff like holocrons, he gives him access to knowledge, and he gives him, like, Momin's mask. But so far as actual lessons, I think that Palpatine's like, yeah, I'm not going to train that guy. He'll fucking kill me. What am I, retarded? So, like, I don't think Palpatine ever actually intends to train Vader, because he knows that Vader is more powerful than him, even fucked up, and that he doesn't need an actual competitor.
And I also think, he doesn't really care about Vader anymore. I mean, Vader has been... How should I say this? He's not complete. He's not complete. He is still very powerful, but he is not complete. He's not like when he was Anakin Skywalker. He's destroyed. A part of him is destroyed. And, he's probably looking for a new apprentice, someone who's going to, replace Anakin Skywalker, or should I say Darth Vader. And he did, and that was Anakin Skywalker's son. He wanted him to become the new apprentice, and for him to take his father's place as the apprentice to Darth Sidious. And yeah, Darth Sidious didn't really he didn't really like what has become of his apprentice. So yeah.
Which is part of why I like the idea of the Sith Rule of Two redraft. That fixes that issue really nicely. So, moving on to the Jedi. Okay, so how would the Jedi see the Chaos Gods? Okay, so for the Jedi, very little would change. It would be much more like an addition to their knowledge, and it would be a very panicky addition. Like, imagine that you had an environmentalist group who was always against pollution, but then learned that global warming was a thing. It's like, oh, we were always against this to begin with, but now we've learned that it can destroy everything, and it's so much worse than we ever imagined. So that is very much how the Jedi would take it. They would be like, okay, we have to intensify all of our Jedi-ness and be more tranquil and all, like fight the dark side. That's the funny part, is that if we're talking about the Jedi and the time of the Clone Wars, their reaction would be to try to find the worshippers of the Dark Gods and kill them all and cut off the Dark Gods' access to the physical world by attacking their followers, not realizing that by doing that, they're just fueling them, and that there's no fucking way to cut them off. And that as people are born Force sensitive, this threat will simply continue to perpetuate, like year after year, generation after generation. So the Jedi, I don't think, would have a particularly good way of dealing with this, because they're so screwed in their current ideology insofar as the Clone Wars Council is concerned. Yoda, after his revelations with the Force priestesses, may say, okay, guys, for real now, we need to retreat from the galaxy, find like isolated places where we can separate and just meditate and fill the Force with like calm and shit, and then go out and just do humanitarian acts and basically just become pacifists, because the reality of this is that we fuel it when we feed into it. But then you have a Jedi like Mace Windu, who would simply just be like, that's too extreme. Jedi have lightsabers for a reason. Mine's purple. I'm going to use it. So the Jedi would try to stop it. They wouldn't change. Their ideology wouldn't shift. They just come to the realization that if the dark side is fed enough, if darksiders feed it enough, it can become cognizant in a way that it wasn't before, and even more dangerous and more able to affect the world, which would only intensify by whatever method they see it their attempts to counteract it, which could, in the end, just fuel it. There would be some Jedi who would... See, there's always going to be Jedi who trifle with the dark side, and those Jedi in this case would be like, well, these are beings composed entirely of the Force. Surely they have wisdom and answers, and we shouldn't be so quick to toss them out. And it's like, ugh, guys, I understand where you're coming from. I really do. Chaos gods are all dark side. But, you know, we may actually end up seeing how they try to deal with that in its own way. But yeah, there would still be defectors in the Jedi who end up worshiping the dark gods just because they try to understand them and see them as fundamentally a part of the Force, which they would be if they came into existence. So, you know, you're stuck between a rock and a fucked up place when you're the Jedi. And honestly, there'd be no good response from them because of how divided they would be in this regard. At least so far as the Clone Wars Council is concerned. Oh my gosh. Sorry that I'm yawning so much. Just, like I said, insomnia. So, let's move down, read maybe 2 or 3 more of these. Q&A. Will we see more of 1313? That's from Kyle Howley. Yes, we will.
Yeah, whatever left of him.
Let's see here. Jean-Luc Martel. Q&A. Will all this warp energy and anger start bringing back some ancient Sith? Will we see the return of something like Darth Nihilus? It will definitely have effects. But I can't actually give you clues or hints as to those things without it being some big spoilers. So, I have to leave that one there. Let's see here. I'll do one more, and then I'll sign off for now. Q&A from Gundamvid. Q&A. Will the Imperium know about Kyber crystals? Would they have any use for the Imperium? Heck yes, man. Okay, so Kyber crystals, the things that make them really amazing is that that you can feed energy into a Kyber crystal and it puts out more than it received. That's like free energy. So I don't even think I have to say any more than that for you to understand how the Mechanicus would fucking cream themselves. These Kyber crystals would be holy to any being of the Fulgurite order. I mean, think about it. Like, if you know what a Fulgurite priest is, heck, honestly, all Electro priests would find Kyber crystals to be sorry about that. To be absurdly holy divine objects that are basically personifications of the motive force and physical substance. Let me see here. So you have to remember that like one half of the order of Electro priests, the Fulgurites, are obsessed with energy conservation. So the idea of feeding energy into something and then getting more energy back, it's just hard to it's hard for me to quantify what they would see that as. It's like a direct miracle gift from the motive force. You give some there and you get a lot back. The other half of the Electro priests, I forget what their names are, but they're obsessed with the opposite, which is just blasting energy everywhere and blasting out lightning and blasting everything with energy and giving the gift of the motive force as far as you can. Well, imagine for them, you you blast this thing with energy and it blasts out many times more than what you gave it. So for tech priests in general, Kyber crystals would be at the very, very least mouth-wateringly interesting, but at most unspeakably holy. The Imperium in general wouldn't understand too much about that insofar as like they don't really build their own stuff, but if they could understand or grasp it, it would become a resource of the highest caliber, of the highest magnitude. Several technologies that they just can't make work anymore, that they can't replicate, they could jury-rig to replicate and work by using Kyber crystals. That's huge. It's huge for everyone.
It'll be terrifying for everyone.
So will the Imperium know about Kyber crystals? Yes. I mean, if you think that they're not pulling apart lightsabers as soon as they get them, then you don't know the Mechanicus. So let's see here. I'll do one more. Just one. Luke Sheely. Will we see more clone characters in future episodes? I specifically want to see Delta Squad from the Clone Commando games. Yes. Yes, you will, actually. I plan to use them in some capacity. The only issue with the Clone Commandos from the Clone Commandos games is that I didn't read all the books for the Clone Commandos, and so I'm tempted to use like things like Kalskirata and get all that goodness in there. But since I never finished them, and since I read them when I was like a freaking kid, like truly a little tyke, I don't remember enough to be loyal to their lore, like truly do them justice. So I could do their game justice because I remember the game super clearly, everything about it, especially the loss at the end of Sev. But oh man, but everything else I'd have to get a huge refresher on, which I may do, but I haven't decided if I have that much effort to spare as of this moment. That being said, definitely a thing I'm looking at. Alrighty, so that will be the last question I answer for now. If you guys have any more questions, go ahead and put them into the actual videos, not the aftertalks, and I'll go ahead and get through them. So, until I come out with the week of Star Wars versus 40K and just pump out all the way to the end in that single burst, until then, I'll see you guys next time.
Okay, guys, that's it with Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K episode 23, after talk made by AFanWithTooMuchTime. Yes, look, I've stated this before already, that if I were to choose between Black Karma and Carcosa Planet, or should I say Cursed Carcosa, I would definitely choose Black Karma. I think I would have a better chance at a future if I was on that planet instead of Carcosa, Cursed Carcosa. Yeah, look, these two regiments, the Obsidian Guard and the Carcosa Untouchables, are really going to become a serious menace for the civilians of Axiom to deal with, especially when it comes to the Carcosa Untouchables. I'm even afraid to, think about what's going to happen to these people, as these guys continue to push forward and just crush all opposition in front of them. But we can only hope for the best for the civilians, and hopefully the Jedi and the clone troops can also assist. But yeah, it just looks bad. It just looks really, really bad. But I like how AFanWithTooMuchTime has, given us a backstory behind these two regiments. In terms of the planets, Black Karma is a planet that I can already imagine in my mind. How it would look like, and it being in complete total darkness. Not orbiting a star, not in a nebula cloud where light can reflect on it. It's just utter darkness, and you can just imagine yourself on that battle station. I don't know if it's a battle station or if it's just like a fortress station, or it's just, I don't know what it is exactly, but yeah, it's quite interesting. And I would also want to know who built this place. I think AFanWithTooMuchTime did say that humans created it, but for what purpose we still don't really know. And then with Carcosa, that planet needs to be, I think it needs to be destroyed. It's just too dangerous. You can't have, people having children on such a planet. You can't have people, continuing their lives on such a planet. It's not worth it, even for all those resources. But because this is the Imperium of Man, no matter the cost, they will have people on such planets, and they will mine, and they will have those resources. But yeah, quite interesting backgrounds for these two regiments. And of course, we also had questions from the viewers, especially the ones dealing with Commander 65, whether Bloody Eyes is going to come out in full effect in future episodes. How the Jedi and the Sith would deal with the realization of the existence of the Chaos Gods, and how they would react to such a situation. That was also quite interesting. And yeah, guys, I guess that's it. That's it for today with AFanWithTooMuchTime. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And I will see you guys Thursday. Yes, Thursday. Hopefully. Hopefully, because today is Monday. I'm recording this on Monday, so hopefully Thursday. Hopefully, yeah. I can't keep up with my schedule. There's just so many things going on in this country. Okay, bye guys. Bye.